You're listening to the Night Stalker Rescue. Episode 7. My team assisted me, and I felt their bodies bracing against the cavern wall, their outstretched hands providing footholds and support to hoist me toward the jungle surface. The sunlight seemed blinding after the darkness of the hole, and I scanned the ground beneath the ferns that shielded this portal from above. No enemy boots in immediate eyesight, and my next step was to listen for voices. Getting killed was one thing, but I couldn't afford a misstep that would compromise my team's location. But our hiding spot had precious little time remaining until it was discovered one way or another, and the second there was no human sound amid the birds shrieking overhead, I braced my arms on the moist leaf litter blanketing the mud around me. Hoisting myself to surface level, I cradled my rifle in the crook of my arms and began high-crawling away from the hole on my knees and elbows. My sole advantage was the density of vegetation around me, but that narrow margin of fortune would evaporate as enemy fighters closed in. If they didn't discover me, they'd discover my team, and at this close proximity, one was as bad as the next. But with the collective hours of pursuit, my filthy fatigues were already blending as well as they ever would. A sudden flash of color next to my face caused me to freeze in horror. A huge, flat centipede emerged from beneath the leaves, its armor-like body segments kept in motion by twin rows of bright orange legs that clattered away from me. Well, that was fucking terrifying, I thought, as the 7-inch-long venomous creature disappeared around a rock. Its sudden appearance had sent my heart into wild palpitations of fear, making the prospect of confronting armed men seem less daunting by comparison. I continued moving. At least the vipers would be in the trees, I thought, or at least hoped. Crawling low, I moved the direction we'd come until the vegetation broke into spotty patches ending in the narrow clearing we'd just crossed. Scanning between the trees, I crawled forward until I glimpsed sunlight marking the clearing ahead. It was a view, to be sure, but not much of one. Merely a narrow strip of visibility in the high grass that would give me a fleeting look at enemy fighters. Getting a view of Khalil here would be a moonshot, but if I moved much closer, I'd be found and killed at once. My neck began burning with the impossibility of this situation. I assumed a prone firing position nonetheless, adjusting my legs and feeling a bulky object in my right cargo pocket bang against my thigh. Momentarily confused, I patted my pocket and realized it was the enemy radio I'd snatched at the small campfire on our way to Josephine. I'd almost forgotten that I was still carrying it, but now, driven by despair, I desperately hoped it could be our salvation. Retrieving the radio from my pocket, I considered my next move. The power and volume knobs on this short-range radio were one and the same, and I rotated the knob just one click counterclockwise, then another, until the small screen came to life with a frequency, and I heard the faint chatter of enemy transmissions in Tausug. Then I transmitted to Ian, whispering over my command net. "Angel 1, Angel 1. Ian answered. "Go for Angel 1. How are you guys holding up?" "Not incredibly well. I need to relay an enemy frequency from a radio we captured." "Send it." I gave him the frequency, concluding the numbers with the whispered and infinitely hopeless request, "Can you track that frequency and get us any more info?" Ian's response in my earpiece was the last thing I wanted to hear under these circumstances. "Sorry, brother. That's the same frequency I'm already monitoring." Of course it was. We hadn't been able to catch a break since stepping out of the stream. It was just as I'd thought before. There was a finite amount of good fortune in combat, and in redirecting our efforts from killing Khalil to throwing ourselves into the fray in an attempt to rescue Josephine, we'd wrung out every last drop of our luck in the Philippine jungle. Now we'd pay the price for that, one way or the other. "Copy," I told Ian. "No sweat. I'll figure something out." But what that would be, I had no idea. Based on the fact that the enemy wasn't stepping on me at this second, I could reasonably conclude that I was outside of Khalil's immediate security, yet well within the perimeter he'd established to contain us. Those perimeter forces didn't concern themselves with Khalil's safety, and his personal entourage wasn't concerned with finding the pilot. In between was a narrow bubble of complacency, and that's exactly where I'd positioned myself. If I had Ian direct an airstrike against the clearing, Khalil would hear the birds coming and hide in the jungle. Even if I could miraculously summon the 360-degree firebombing of the jungle a safe distance from my team's position, the enemy was so close that many would be driven closer to us, not farther. And even if things got so desperate that I was willing to risk it, the carrier group aircraft hadn't arrived yet. So what could I do? I didn't know, short of remaining in the prone and hoping for my enemy to stumble into view. I had to find a way to usurp the massive enemy forces here, to somehow pit my luck against Khalil's. I scanned the clearing through my reticle, vaguely registering the quiet, tinny noises from the enemy radio, voices transmitting back and forth in Tausug. Momentarily breaking my aim, I reached for the radio to turn it off. The absolute last thing I needed now was any further distraction. Then something strange happened. A single voice cut through the chatter, speaking first in Tausug and then in flawless English, an odd hint of British accent on his otherwise Filipino pronunciation.
Cease all radio traffic. This frequency has been compromised.
This was unmistakably Khalil Nuruddin's voice, and I realized someone must have just discovered the 3 fighters my team had killed on our way toward the crash site, and the peculiar absence of their radio. The next transmission sent my heart racing.
I wish to speak to the leader of the team on this island.
My skin began to crawl, thoughts racing in disbelief at the obvious. I now had a direct line to the very terrorist leader my team had been sent here to kill. It was supposed to be an in-and-out mission with no U.S. affiliation and a minimum of 1 dead body in our wake. Instead, we were now at the center of a military firestorm, downed pilot in tow, and it increasingly appeared as if we weren't going to make it out before the enemy found us. I had no intention of answering Khalil. This was a short-range radio. It could receive transmissions from Khalil's long-range unit, but didn't have the ability to transmit over long distances. If I replied, he'd know I was in close proximity.
I know you are listening.
I hesitated a moment, reasoning that engaging in a dialogue with a madman wasn't a good idea, but a voice inside me asked one question that I had no viable answer to. Do you have a better idea? I keyed the radio. You're right, I spoke quietly, just above a whisper. I am listening.
An American,
he replied, sounding intrigued.
My name is Khalil Nuruddin, and yours, sir.
I transmitted. Call me Suicide.
Very well, Suicide. Let us talk business.
Keep him talking, I thought. Draw him into the open for a kill shot. So I replied, speaking as a fellow businessman, I'm afraid I find your practices a bit concerning. His tone was amicable, even polite, as he responded.
My business practices emerged as all others, as a means to an end that fit my current resources. Your country appears to understand that principle quite well.
I swallowed, then keyed the radio again to ask, and what's that supposed to mean?
Well, there are no publicly acknowledged Americans on this island, and yet, from the current circumstances, I can only assume that when the helicopter went down, your team was already here to do business with me.
Well, I thought, this guy was no idiot. Demented and maniacal, perhaps, but no moron. That's an audacious assumption.
I am in the business of audacity, sir, as I imagine you are. So I will make you a deal, from one businessman to another.
He still hadn't appeared in the clearing. I felt my throat constricting as the full absurdity of this plan began to take hold. My grand notion of sniping Khalil was going down in flames that grew in intensity by the second. I tried to sound casual. "I'm listening." There was a pause before he answered, though I could guess his offer. If we were going to die on this island, and the odds certainly seemed to be in favor of that, then we'd go down fighting. The proverbial blaze of glory seemed glamorous to people who'd never been to war, people like me when I joined the military out of high school. But once I'd cut my teeth in combat, I saw it for what it was: pure, unadulterated chaos. Any morals of patriotic righteousness or national policy hovered in a fog high above the battlefield, indiscernible to those in the battle who instead fought for one another. So much the better, I thought. Maybe we'd accomplished nothing against Khalil, but at least Josephine wouldn't die alone. She'd fall beside her brothers, her fellow warriors who had risked it all to save her. And there was a virtue in that, a noble honor that was absent in much of the warfare I'd seen. Khalil continued,
"Consider to radio a token of mutual respect, and take it with you when you and your colleagues leave this island unharmed. I will have my people withdraw and allow your safe passage anywhere you choose."
"Safe passage and a free radio," I mused. "Sounds good. What's the catch?"
"You have the pilot. Turn him over to my hospitality, and you will be freed."
I pinched my eyes shut, then blinked the sweat away as I scanned the sunlight in the clearing ahead. Khalil wasn't going to show himself. This was over. "That last clause," I replied in a near whisper, feeling my pulse quicken, "is a bit of a problem for my people. I believe our understanding of hospitality differs slightly from yours." My breaths grew shallower as I began to hyperventilate. I tried to draw Khalil into the open and failed. Instead, I'd have no choice but to rejoin my team and give the order to make one last-ditch effort to shoot ourselves free of the perimeter. Except I knew what would happen immediately afterward. Khalil would quickly and effectively maneuver his forces, a calm and haunting voice over a long-range radio that could transmit to the bloodthirsty masses of enemy fighters now swarming around us. And we'd have no better chance of seeing the coastline than we did of waiting helplessly for some outside rescue to arrive. The Night Stalker Rescue is a production of Fathom Curve Media. Written by Jason Kasper. Performed by Justin Price and Tara Novi. Sound design by Darren Bowling. Casting and original recording by Audio Sorceress. Produced by Andrew Watts for Fathom Curve Media, an imprint of Severn River Publishing.